I literally can't with the British weather anymore, because like 2 seconds ago it was raining and now the sun's coming out. Like, I literally can't keep up with it anymore. I literally hate being British at these points, because I just like, no, the like weather keeps having mood swings and I can't keep up anymore. Welcome back to Goldilocks Original. I am Rose, as you should know by now. Oh, if you don't, hello! I am Rose. I don't know why I hesitated. Welcome back! That was like the most awful intro there. And I'm going to keep it in because I'm going to show that I am human and I am prone to make mistakes. So, with that opening in mind, I'm looking at my notes because I lost track. That intro screw up really like messed me up. So just to let you know, there's gonna be a possible change in lighting because the weather is just not having it today. It just wants everyone to know that it's in a mood. Like, it's just like guys, I know you want a sunny May, but unfortunately I'm just going through some stuff. So yeah, there might be some kind of change in lighting, but that is the cons of using natural light, so there we go. But anyway, I think we're gonna go and move on to what we're all here for, and that is my thoughts and takeaways on witches, James I and the English witch hunts. And I actually said I was going to read this ages ago, I think back in November. Yeah, because I kind of started reading it then, but I hadn't fully immersed myself in it until recently. Apologies for that. And apologies to myself, because this book, I'm just going to say, was freaking amazing. Like, honestly, it was ta-da. It was brilliant. Like, I cannot find any faults with it. So, with that in mind, I'm just going to read you the blurb. In Belvoir, I hope I'm saying that right. In Belvoir Castle, in September 1613, the heir of one of England's great noble families falls suddenly and dangerously ill. Within a few short weeks, he will suffer excruciating death. Soon the whole family will be stricken with the same terrifying symptoms. The second son and last male heir of the line will not survive. It is said witches are to blame, and so the Earl of Rutland's sons will not be the last to die. The case is among those conscript to the European witch craze of the 15th to 18th centuries, when suspected witches were burned, hanged, or tortured by the thousand. Like those, it is the tale of superstition and ultimately injustice. A reminder of how paranoia and hysteria can create an environment in which non-conforming spells, I can't even pronounce that word, spells death. But as Tracy Borman reveals here, it's not quite typical. The most powerful and much evil figure of the Jacobean court had vested interest in the events at Belvoir. He would mastermind a conspiracy that has remained hidden for centuries. Right, there we go. I probably got some words wrong in that blurb. I'm sorry about that. My dyslexia coming through there. But yeah, that's like the basis of it. So first things first, it goes into the Belvoir witches case, and I never heard of this case before, and I'm so sad that I never did, because I don't think it's gotten as much like attention as the Pendle witch trial, which is actually mentioned in the book. But the Belvoir witches consist of 3 women of the same family: Joan Fowler, Margaret Fowler, and Philippa Fowler. I think that's their names, isn't it? Hold on. I'm going to double check. Margaret and Philippa, the Witches of Belleville. And yeah, it consists of those, and it also centres on the Manners family, the Earl of Rutland, mainly the 6th Earl of Rutland, Francis Manners, and his family, his 2 sons, his daughter and his wife, and his previous wife as well. So it mainly centres around that, and like the build up towards the death of the boys, and then subsequently the Flower Women's arrest. And also, not only that, but it goes into a bit how historical figures have shaped history, and especially like shaped the witch hunts particularly. And I'm gonna have to look at my notes. Like, one of the part of what it goes into is James I and how he was very adamantly against witches. Like, he had this whole hysteria about it. He even wrote a pamphlet about it. I think it was called Demonology, like Demonology something. It's in there, and I recognise it as soon as I read it again. But he wrote this whole pamphlet, like just what signs to look for, and just basically being like, witches are evil, kill them all. And yeah, he was witch mad. And what was really ironic, spoilers by the way, what was really ironic is that Tracy revealed, like, in his dying moments, the people who was closest to him are like his lover, his suspected lover, and the suspected lover's mother tried to use spells or witchcraft to save his life in his dying moments. And I was like, James, you two-faced B-word. Like, honestly, he's the reason, like, he was part of the reason why this witch craze hyped itself up when it did. And then he, on his deathbed, he tries to use magic to save his life. Like, come on, get your life together, mate. Or not, at that point. It didn't work. Spoiler alert. And another historical figure that we learn about this time, that was a part of the witch craze, you could say, was George Villiers. Is that how you say it? Yeah, George Villiers, I think that's how his name's pronounced. And he was the suspected lover of James. Because I actually wrote in my notes as I was reading about this, and I was reading about James I, like Tracy goes into how James I had this whole macho personality. Like, he went all the way to Denmark to fetch his soon-to-be bride, and because she was stuck somewhere, and he did that to look like a noble hero, a noble knight. And as I was reading about James I was like, was he the one who was gay? Like, I swear one of the monarchs that was named James was gay. And then when she went into the rumours about James, I was like, yeah, he's the one who was gay. Which, no bad thing about that, like, all power to him, but at the same time I was just like, was he the one? Like, I got really confused. I was like, was he the one? And when it was confirmed, I was like, yeah. Like, power to him, like, you know, but apparently Tracy was describing at one point how he went through lovers really quickly because he liked young men, and then as soon as they got old, they were no use for him. So he clearly had the type. And then one of them, the most prominent suspected lover, was George Villiers, and he became Duke of Buckingham, I believe. And he was the one who James pretty much stuck with as a possible lover, and they were really close. And there's a possibility. Basically, what Tracy has suspected, and I think she might be right, is that how the boys died, they could have just died from illness. There's some possible plague illness. That is a big possibility. But she also put out there that George was very adamant on marrying the Manners, Francis Manners' eldest daughter and only surviving child, Catherine. And she was, but like, because George was Protestant, but the Manners family were Catholic, and that was also a big thing back in that day because James was Protestant, so he made England and Scotland Protestant country, and so being Catholic back in that day was a big no-no. But the reason why why the Manners family got away with it was because they were so close to King James I, and because of this as well, because of their Catholic faith, they wanted Catherine to marry someone with the same Catholic faith. But George didn't have that Catholic faith. He was Protestant, so they were always being like, no, you can't marry Catherine. So that went on for a very long time, and the way George, from the sounds of it, was very power hungry, and what Tracy has put out there is that maybe he poisoned the two heirs to Rutland, to gain more land and power, which probably did work, if that is the case. So yeah, God, I'm going off and off, aren't I? Because probably some of the things that I am talking about doesn't make any sense, so that's why I do recommend reading the book. But one of the things that I really liked about how Tracy did this book was that she went into all the build up towards the boys' deaths. Like, she went into whole details about Francis Manners' history, his wife's history, and Tracy even goes into like descriptions of what the parties may have looked like and how much things have cost. What like, the Manners family weren't really great in finances, but every like tour year, like every time James first did a tour around England, they would have this extravagant party for him that cost more than they can afford, but they did it to be on good standing with James I, and it actually worked. That's why they were so close with James I, because he loved going to Belvoir, because they always treated him very greatly and gave him great entertainment. So yeah, there was like, she went into all the details of all the build up towards, and even learn about the flower women and how, like, no one apparently liked them. Like, they were actually on good standing with the Manners family at one point. Like, the Celia, I think the wife's name was, Francis's wife's name was Celia. She actually preferred the flower women to all the other servants, so they were always treated better by the Manners family. But because of that, there was a lot of distrust with other servants towards them, and a lot of like, probably like envy and jealousy. And then the rumours started, like them being witches, and the Manners family didn't believe it at first because they liked them so much. And, you know, one thing led to another, and then, you know, it just all like erupted into this like huge witch hunt trial situation. I won't go into detail of what happened because you can read the book. I don't want to give too much spoilers away because I've already given too much spoilers. And even if you don't read the book, you can just look up about some of the facts that were in the book. So the learning highlights that I have taken away from Tracy Borman's James I and the English Witch Hunts is like learn about all the different influences and factors that went into the witch hunts, mainly politics. Like, there's this one example that Tracy Borman did. Firstly, I don't know if she relates this to a cousin of James's or a half brother of James's, because I tried to look it up online, couldn't find it, and I tried to look in the book to see if I could quickly find it, but I couldn't. But basically, Tracy explains how this relative of James's was gaining popularity in Scotland and was kind of against James. And James the First didn't really like that, and then one thing led to another, and he accused, with the witch craze going on, building up at that point, he accused this opponent, his cousin I think, of witchcraft and using witchcraft against him to make horrible things happen to him. And ultimately they came to like a deal in the end. I think he was exiled or had to give up all his lands or something like that. But yeah, he was proven guilty. But that's the thing, like the witch craze was kind of used to have a revenge plot against someone. Like if a neighbour accidentally tipped your milk, so immediately the craze was, you're a witch. Like to just like be like, I hate you, so I'm going to accuse you of witchcraft. Like, you know, it was both used as superstition but also used as a tool to get rid of people. And that was both in politics and just in daily life, really. And I think that was very interesting to really understand and how that worked. It was also really interesting, like with the witch book that I read by Ronald Hutton that I've already reviewed. It was really interesting about learning about all the other witchcraft cases that were going on around the same time and how all the drama surrounding that and all the documentation of that. That was also really interesting to learn about and something that I can maybe interpret in my own novel too. And what I found really interesting is how influenced how our witch craze was influenced by other countries, mainly like Scotland, because that's where James I came from, and also Denmark. Like, I didn't know how Denmark was going to get involved in this, but apparently they were witch crazy before England was. So that coupled with Scotland and a little bit of Germany as well, you know, like how other countries and cultures influenced our perception of witches. It was really interesting to learn that in such a simple but elegant way. So I think Tracy was really good at doing that. And again, like I said before, it was really interesting learning about the flower women. I keep wanting to say Fowler, but it's actually flower. But it was really interesting learning about the flower women because I had never heard of this case before, and I really think it should be highlighted a bit more because it's so interesting. And learning about all these women and how I learned a bit about, like, Tracy was really good at building up their kind of like relationship between the three women. How one was accused of basically being improper with another man, being a prostitute basically, and she was shunned from the Manners family, which started the whole escalation of events. And you know, you really felt a personality from each of the women as well through Tracy's writing, and I felt that was so well done, and I thought that was so brilliant of Tracy to do, because at the end of the day, these women were just women. They're just ordinary people going about their daily lives, and I honestly don't think they actually poisoned the boys, like, or like intended to kill the boys, but that's my opinion. But there were things against them, because I believe Joan Flower was a cunning woman, and for those who don't know about cunning women, they're basically witches, but like healing witches. Basically, that is another term to put as a witch, but not saying witch, just a cunning woman that helps give medication to people who are ill or have some kind of like scrape or whatever, and often being a cunning woman or man is, back in those days, was a very risky job, because if you get one medication run, if you get one thing wrong with a client, you could be accused of witchcraft. And it wasn't even a well-paying job. Like, most of the people who would use a cunning man or cunning woman were in villages with not a lot of money, so there wasn't really a well-paying job, and it was high risk factors. And they would always be careful with what clients they chose, so that they wouldn't be turned around and accused of witchcraft. So yeah, you know, there were things going against them, but at the end of the day, I don't actually think they wanted to kill the boys, but that's my opinion. I think it's Tracy's opinion a little bit too. My favourite lines or favourite parts. Okay, these aren't technically I enjoyed these parts, but like they were like the most interesting, and also just made me kind of chuckle a little bit. So the first one is on page 67. I have to warn you, this is the most sexist joke. Not the sexist joke. This is the most sexist thing that I've ever heard, and I've heard a lot of sexist things. And when I sent it to my friends, they were just like, bloody hell. So I'm just going to get it up on the book. It's on page 67. So, as a great resonance philosopher, Marzolio Freak Neo. I'm literally terrible at this. I'm going to put it in the description, in the title box. Rather bluntly put it, women should be used like a chamber pots, hidden away once a man has pissed in them. Fantastic. That is literally the most sexist thing I've ever read, and I've read and heard a lot. Who thinks like that? Like, apparently the 1600s people, but bloody hell. Could you imagine saying that? Like, well, I just said it, and I was kind of throwing up in my mouth saying it. Like, oh my god. But it really gives an idea of how men fought back in those days. It was just like, I'm a chamber pot, apparently. What the hell? Another thing that I really liked that Tracy Bowman really touched upon is that women were against women most of the time. Like, most of the trials that took place, some of the witnesses that came forward were women accusing other women. And I'm really glad that she brought that to the forefront, because it wasn't just men just accusing any woman just because they didn't like them. It was women turning against women too. And I think that really highlights how society was, and also how superstition sort of played a part in women turning against women. Because, like, you know, especially in like the poorer classes, that's where the superstition of witches was really heightened and really spread out. So I guess like the women felt the need to protect themselves, and that meant maybe turning against each other. And I felt that was really good, and that was kind of like a very interesting part of the book as well. And so my next interesting / favourite part of the book is the thing that made me laugh the most. It was literally towards the end, and it was in relation to the witch trials and the witch hunts dying down a little bit towards the end of the 1600s, I believe. It's on page 237. Yeah, this was in 1712, and I'll just read it to you. Hold on, I'll start from the beginning actually. In England, the last conviction for witchcraft, which was subsequently overturned, was in 1712. The accused was Jane Wenham, a Hertfordshire woman who was said to have communicated with the devil and flown through the air as a witch. Sir John Powell, who presided over the case, famously summed up the growing skepticism about witchcraft by remarking, "There is no law against flying." I really think that needs to be on a t-shirt. There is no law against flying. Well, there might be now, but I just love that you said that. Like, I was like, he's got a point. There's no law against flying. That was the first line out of the whole thing. Yeah, so I think we can understand why that was my favourite. Like, oh my god, could you imagine saying that? That's like basically saying in the midst of court, when someone's been accused of breathing too much, there is no law against breathing. Could you imagine? Okay, let's stop. My overall thoughts. So I think the biggest impact for me throughout the whole reading of this was basically, I hadn't spoken about this before, but I think it's important for me to understand, for you guys to know and understand why this might impact my novel editing now, because I think I mentioned it in my novel update. But basically, Tracy has gone into some of the tortures that the women went through in their interrogations, and it's horrible. I nearly threw up a couple of times because I was reading about some of the torture techniques, and it was just awful. And not only that, their imprisonment was awful as well, because at one point Tracy highlights the fact that many of these women that were imprisoned after being accused of witchcraft were raped and sexually assaulted in those prisons, and the men would then blame the women, claiming that they had bewitched them. And it's so awful. Like, I nearly cried. Like, my whole heart just broke then, 'cause, like, we know about it, but when you're actually reading about it, and you're actually reading about the horrors, what these women went through, and how they were blamed for these horrors, it's disgusting. And in regards to my writing, in my first draft of my novel, there is an attempt of sexual assault. Luckily my character, unlike the unfortunate people and women who had suffered behind imprisonment back in the day, in 1600s, the character that has this near attempt of sexual assault manages to get away. And I was actually thinking of cutting it out, because I felt like, firstly, I didn't want it to be seen as a plot device, and I also don't want to, like, have especially like my female characters, to go through this for no reason, just to, you know, amp up this, like we see in like Game of Thrones and everything like that, like rape and sexual assault just being constantly used against women. And I just didn't want, at first I didn't really like want that. But as I was reading this, and I was reading what the women went through in prison, I'm kind of like having this like mental battle a little bit, because I don't want to do it, because I feel like it just gets used a lot through especially dark fantasy novels. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like I'll be doing a disservice to the women who went through this by not touching upon it, because unfortunately what I'm basing this on is history, and this is what happened to women, unfortunately. Like, the only good thing about it in my novel is that my character managed to get away. And I don't know, I haven't fully decided if I am going to cut it out or if I'm going to keep it in, or if I'm going to change it in a way. But yeah, that's really impacted me towards my novel, and I'm really glad that Tracy has made me think about this a bit more clearly, because I really want, one of the things I want to do with my novel series is just to not honour the women, but pay tribute to the women who were accused and tortured and killed after being accused of being a witch. And it's a difficult one, and it's something that I'm going to have to rack my brain through for a while as I edit through the novel and everything like that, and just kind of decide what I think is best and what I think would be beneficial for both my novel series and also for the characters. And, you know, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I also, one of the overall thoughts is just like how the power plays within these sort of situations, because unfortunately most of this witch craze that I read about in this book was mainly influenced by people in power who just wanted an ego boost. And like James, literally, he always wanted an ego boost. No offense to him. he always wanted to show everyone his masculinity and how he was so macho and everything like that. And honestly, it's just so amazing how people with big egos can control so much. And I think I need to kind of show that in my own novel work as well, how much power and title gives you in regards to everything, how everything works. And another takeaway is that Tracy is a brilliant writer. I literally fell in love with Tracy's Borman's writing of the whole situation with the Belver witches. I still don't think I'm saying Belver right, but I just fell in love with how Tracy described it, and like how she built up all the elements, like James III, George Villiers, the Manners family, the Fowler women, and also went into the culture and the superstition around England at that point, and how it slowly went heightened up until the Jones sisters and everything like that. And yeah, it was just so good. And I'm not kidding when I say this. Tracy Borman had just, after I read this, Tracy, like, I really want to do a PhD now. Like, I would so want to do a PhD with my creative writing, so doing a PhD research around like the witch trials or something like that. I don't know, like, I've been thinking about it for a while, and then when I finished this book, I was like, I so want to do a PhD surrounding like creative writing and witchcraft or something like that. Like, that is something that I would love to do now, because Tracy has just made history look so interesting but also so devastating at the same time, and I love it. And I am really considering doing a PhD now. Like, I really want to get, like, my research, it's not just Tracy that's made me do this, like all the research that I've done, it's made me so hyped, and I feel like I know so much more about the world and how the world works and how the world worked back then, and I'm just so interested in it now, and I really want to learn more, and I would love to put my research into it even more in the future, if that makes sense. So yeah, what else is on my notes? Nothing. But yeah, I really like this book. I follow Tracy on Instagram now, so that's how much I liked it. I follow her on Instagram. And I might actually, because I believe she's written other books. I think she's written a book about Anne Boleyn, and I'm really wanting to read that, because Anne Boleyn was actually my favourite queen, like my favourite wife of Henry VIII. So I really want to read that, but that's going to have to wait in line. But until I read any more books by her, Tracy, this book, Tracy, is my favourite. I'm probably going to read it again in the future without all the tags. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. The next book review will be The Witch, by Rebecca Tanas, and yeah, I've already read it, so if I'm wearing the same outfit in this next video, that's because I'm filming it the next day. I have nothing else to say, so I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you later. Bye guys.